Part 1. The Symphony of Sawdust. The morning sun always touched the hills of Nazareth before it reached the valley, but the light that spilled into the open doorway of the woodshop was enough. It illuminated a million floating dust motes, turning them into a swirling galaxy of gold. In the center of this quiet universe stood Yeshua. He was a man in his late 20s, his hands rough and calloused, his forearms tight with the sinewy strength of a lifetime of physical labor. He wore a simple, coarse tunic, tied at the waist, covered in a fine layer of white and brown dust. The smell of the shop was intoxicating, a rich, earthy blend of sharp cedar, bitter olive wood, sweet cypress, and the metallic tang of sharpened iron tools. For years, this shop had been his entire world. It was here that he had learned the trade from Joseph. He could still hear the echo of the older man's voice, raspy but gentle, guiding his hands. "Do not fight the wood, my son," Joseph used to say. "The grain has a story. You must listen to it. If you force the iron against its will, it will splinter and break. Work with it, and it will become something beautiful." Joseph was gone now, resting with their ancestors, and Yeshua was the master of the shop. Yet he never felt alone. Amidst the scraping of the plane and the rhythmic thud of the mallet, there was another voice. It was not a voice of sound, but of profound, heavy silence, the voice of his Father in heaven, a constant, whispering presence that guided not just his hands, but his soul. Part 2. The Yoke of the Oppressed. It was mid-morning when a shadow fell across the threshold. An old farmer named Elias stood there, his face weathered like dried leather, his shoulders slumped under an invisible weight. "Peace to you, Yeshua," Elias said, his voice weary. "And peace to you, Elias. Come in out of the heat," Yeshua replied, setting down his chisel and wiping his brow with the back of his arm. "How is the harvest?" "Difficult," Elias sighed. "The ground is hard this year. But it is not the earth that brings me here. It is my beasts. My oxen are suffering. The yoke I bought from the merchant in Sepphoris is poorly made. It chafes their necks, drawing blood, and they can barely pull the plow. I need a new one. A good one." Yeshua nodded slowly. He stepped out from behind the workbench and walked toward the farmer. "Bring the animals to the yard," he instructed. When Elias brought the two massive oxen, Yeshua did not just glance at them. He approached the beasts gently, murmuring softly to calm them. He ran his calloused hands over their massive, scarred necks, feeling the exact contours of their muscles and the swollen, tender spots where the old yoke had dug into their flesh. He closed his eyes, mapping the shape of their suffering in his mind. "I will make them a yoke, Elias," Yeshua said softly. "It will not be heavy. It will be perfectly measured to their shoulders. When they pull, the weight will be distributed, and it will be easy upon them." Elias looked at the carpenter, touched by the profound care the young man showed for mere animals. "Thank you, Yeshua. I will return in 3 days." Part 3. Shaping the wood, shaping the soul. For the next 2 days, the woodshop became a place of intense, focused creation. Yeshua selected a thick, sturdy piece of sycamore, strong enough to bear the strain of the plow, yet light enough not to burden the animals. He secured the timber to his bench and began to work. Shuklak, shuklak. The drawknife pulled ribbons of wood from the block. With every pull, Yeshua prayed. He did not separate his work from his worship. The two were deeply intertwined. As he shaped the yoke, his mind expanded beyond the four walls of the Nazareth shop. He thought of Elias, struggling against Roman taxation, the hard soil, and the weariness of life. He thought of his neighbors, bowing under the heavy burdens placed upon them by religious leaders who demanded perfection but offered no grace. He thought of a world chafing under the yoke of sin and despair. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened," the voice within him seemed to whisper, a divine current flowing through his very veins. "And I will give you rest." Yeshua paused, his hands resting on the smooth wood. A profound sorrow and an equally profound love washed over him. He knew, with absolute certainty, that he was not just making a wooden tool for a farmer. He was preparing himself. Just as he took away the poorly fitting yoke that wounded the oxen, he was destined to take away the crushing yoke of humanity. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. The words formed in his mind, clear as spring water. He smiled softly, a tear tracing a path through the sawdust on his cheek, and went back to sanding the wood. He made sure every edge was flawlessly smooth, rounded, and perfect. Part 4. The Final Commission. On the third day, Elias returned. Yeshua placed the new yoke upon the oxen. It fit them as though it were a part of their own bodies. The animals, previously agitated, settled down immediately. The wood rested easily across their shoulders, perfectly balanced. Elias was astounded. He ran his hand over the smooth sycamore. It is a masterpiece, Yeshua. You have the hands of a healer, not just a carpenter. Go in peace, Elias, Yeshua said, refusing the extra copper coins the farmer tried to press into his palm. May your harvest be abundant. As Elias led the oxen away, the sun began to set, casting long, purple shadows across the dusty streets of Nazareth. Yeshua stepped back into the shop. The air was cool now. He looked around the room. There were the chisels neatly lined up, the adze, the saws, the hammers. He knew every groove in their wooden handles. They had been molded by the grip of his own hands over the decades. He walked over to the corner where a stack of raw, uncut timber lay. Rough, splintered wood. He stared at the wood, and a vision flashed before his eyes. It was not a vision of a table, or a chest, or a door. It was a vision of two heavy, coarse wooden beams, crossed. He felt a phantom weight press down on his own shoulders, a weight far heavier than any ox yoke. He saw a hill. He saw nails, not used for joining planks, but for something far darker. He did not flinch. He reached out and touched the rough timber, feeling a splinter prick his finger. A single drop of blood welled up. He looked at it in the dimming light. The voice spoke again. It was time. The hidden years were over. The season of shaping wood had passed. The season of shaping the salvation of the world had arrived. Part 5. Leaving the sawdust behind. That evening, Yeshua cleaned the shop with meticulous care. He swept every shaving of wood, every pile of sawdust, until the dirt floor was immaculate. He oiled the iron tools to keep them from rusting and wrapped them in heavy cloth. He was closing the shop. Mary, his mother, watched him from the doorway of their adjoining home. She did not ask what he was doing. She had seen the shift in his eyes over the past few weeks, a deepening, a gathering storm of purpose. She knew the prophecies. She knew the secret of his birth that she had treasured in her heart. Yeshua walked to her and took her hands in his. They were rough, the hands of a laborer, but his touch was infinitely tender. "It is time, mother," he said quietly. Mary's eyes filled with tears, but she did not weep. She nodded, pressing his hands to her cheek. "I know. The Lord go with you, my son." "He is always with me." Yeshua smiled, a gentle, reassuring light in his eyes. The next morning, before the village had fully awoken, Yeshua stepped out of the woodshop for the last time. He wore a fresh tunic, his simple leather sandals kicking up small clouds of dust as he walked. He did not carry a saw, or a hammer, or a measure. He carried only the spirit of his Father. He walked down the winding path out of Nazareth, turning his face toward the Jordan River, where his cousin John was baptizing. Behind him, the woodshop stood silent, the scent of cedar and olive wood lingering in the air. The carpenter was gone. The Savior had stepped into the world.